Well, hello everybody. Welcome to Profiling Evil Live. I thought this would be kind of a interesting way to make up for the big snafu I had in Canada earlier today as I tried uploading a video. So we're going to take a minute, let a few people load in, but I want to say hi to Allison Berry. Thank you. Silent One, thank you. Agree with you. Shouting out to all the people in Florida. Holy cow, they're getting beat up there. I have to fly to that region of the world, but down into Mexico and Belize next week. And frankly, I'm grateful that that storm will be behind me. But it's great to see you coming in, Lucy or Lacey. Thanks. I don't have my glasses on. I'm so stinking vain. Maddie, evening to you as well. Thank you. Good to see people starting to come in. Diane Phoenix, thanks. Hope you can help out tonight. Appreciate your help always. Trish Norman, thanks. I'm going to put this up, Trish. I don't know if this is accurate or not, but it's sure complimentary. So thank you so much. And let me see if any of you put some comments in here. If you tried to watch my video earlier today while I was in Canada, I just early this morning that thing launched because I knew I would be flying most of the day, and I'll be danged if that stinking internet went down and I lost everything. And I thought rather than repost it, I'm going to just do it tonight as we do a live together, and we'll chat a little bit. We'll answer your questions. And I'm doing something kind of crazy. We'll see what happens with this. But I'm going to let those of you who are interested in jumping on with me and chatting for a minute come on, and we'll work our way through this case. So to everybody that's coming in, thanks so much for joining us here at Profiling Evil. I don't do lives very often anymore. I've gotten back to where I'm so busy flying here and there for my day job. And then, of course, I'm still doing a weekly court TV thing that sometimes I just think, oh, I'll record a video and post it up. But I really miss the intimacy of being able to do this one-on-one with you. So thank you so much. Dyson's Crazy Adventures, great to see you. Thanks. I saw you earlier today when everything crashed. So thanks for coming back and giving me a second choice or chance. MCM, yeah, looking for the end, as am I. So we'll see how this goes. So folks down in Australia calling in. Let me see if I can find that real quickly. I didn't catch. Oh, here we go. Sarah, hey Sarah, I'm going to be in Sydney the first couple of weeks of December. Going to be doing some work for Channel 9 and for 60 Minutes Australia, and also as part of launching Mapping Evil with Mike King season 2. And folks, I'm so proud. We actually won the international award for Mapping Evil, and so I'm really excited about that. So if you haven't watched it, go to your favorite podcast platform and watch that. Maybe somebody will shout out that they've actually listened to that. We'll see. Mellow 77. Hey, I just left you up in Saskatchewan, and I took a lot of ribbing. I was keynoting a police conference this week. It's for law enforcement agencies from across North America, and it was being held in Saskatoon. And I took a little ribbing because I mispronounced Saskatchewan and Saskatoon, and holy cow, a lot of other Canadian idioms. But anyway, speaking of idiom, yeah, that was me. But a great conference, hundreds and hundreds of cops there. And I was talking about analytic processes and how to use analytics and GIS as a way to help solve crime. So anyway, what I want to do tonight is a little different, folks. We're going to play some of the recording that I had prepared. I was loading it up and was going to put it on tonight. knowing that I have a more stable internet now that I'm in my office. And then I thought, I'm just going to play it and maybe answer questions and watch what's going on. So, proud mom from Phoenix, thanks for jumping on. Catherine McClure, thank you so much for your support. Moonlight View, and for all of you who are helping and supporting us on the channel memberships and other things, thanks a lot. But most importantly, make sure you're hitting that like button and giving the thumbs up and all that stuff, because it really helps us with the algorithms. And of course, any donations are just deeply appreciated. And I'm going to just use this forum right now to tell you, I pushed for quite some time my book Deceived, an investigative memoir of the Zion Society cult. I don't know if many of you remember or if you even knew, but when I agreed to write this book for the victims of this crime, there were 32 children that we rescued when we broke this cult up. I committed that the proceeds from the book would go to building a new children's justice center. Those are advocacy centers where children can be forensically examined. They meet with police officers, with forensic scientists, with therapists. And it's kind of a process that brings them in one door and kind of walks them through the criminal justice system and prepares them for testifying against the people, getting the kind of counseling they need, the physical, emotional support that they need. And we're breaking ground in January for that new center. And tomorrow we're going to be handing them another $10,000 check. So to all of you who have purchased Deceive, thank you so much. It has made us just swell with pride. And the victims, now survivors of that case, are just so stoked up. We hope that the new Justice Center is completed by December of 2023. And I'm going to fly as many of those kids in as want to come in, since they were the very first victims to go through those doors 31 years ago when the first center opened. So anyway, pretty exciting news. But now let's get busy. Here's the deal, folks. At the very top of the chat is a link. I'm going to put it in here again. If you would like to jump on with me and do kind of a Ask Mike anything, but maybe we stick to this case that we're going to be talking about, or I don't care, whatever you want to talk about, we'll talk about. Maybe we talk about Saskatchewan for a minute or something, and the weird French fry and cheese curd and steak thing that you got going on up there, which is all piled into one big pile. Or we talk about the case, which we're going to talk about. And that's what I want to do. I want to just go into this thing. I'm going to play the video. So for some of you, you saw it already, but I'm going to be watching the chats. I'm going to be watching to see if any of you come in. If you got something that's really pressing, jump in. We'll pause the video. We'll talk a little bit, and we'll see how this thing goes. So I hope, give me some thumbs up if that's going to be all right with you all. And then again, just because I tactfully didn't put on glasses again, if you have a question that's really pressing, obviously I'm going to see a super chat, and plus that helps us with all of the expenses that we have. So thanks a lot. But here, let's get going on this. Well, the evidence in that Georgia mother's death investigation keep rolling in, and speculation in the true crime community is moving faster than the speed of light or wildfire. Let's avoid some of the speculation, folks, and examine the facts as we know them right now. Hey everybody, welcome to Profiling Evil and this special edition on the Debbie Collier case. That's the woman down in Athens, Georgia that died. I'm joining you from Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, up in Canada. I'm here this week speaking at the Northern American Law Enforcement Convention. I hope you'll take a minute as we get started and hit that like and subscribe button and ring the bell so that you get all of our notifications. You know, I want to take a moment and thank those of you who are channel members to Profiling Evil. Your financial support is helping us keep the lights on. And that way we can continue to provide quality content. But for now, let's dig into this case. I appeared on Court TV with Vinnie Politan last night to discuss this case, and our discussion, it swirled around the discovery of Debbie Collier. She was discovered in a ravine in those Georgia woods. It was about 60 miles north of her home. Now, here's where this case gets crazy from my position, right from the get-go. Collier was seen on closed-circuit television cameras at a discount store in Clayton, Georgia. That's, 15 miles north of the place where she's discovered. She was seen dressed in red, and most people are speculating that that was because she was sporting Georgia Bulldog colors, preparing for a football game that was slated to begin that day. Now, many are speculating that she was probably getting ready to go to a tailgating party or something, but I want to caution you folks, all of this is merely speculation, so please don't formulate an opinion until we see more information roll out. Others are saying she was forced to be there. I've not heard anything official yet, and I just want to say I think it's inappropriate to speculate too much before we get more information. It just leads to a whole bunch of misinformation and misguided leads. Now let's take a moment and review the timeline in this case. The media reports are suggesting that neighbors heard a commotion coming out from the Collier home on September 9th. Now listen, there's no indication of what commotion really means. So rather than speculate, again, I just want to call it like it is. The neighbors said there was a commotion coming out of the residence. Now, again, there's a lot of folks out there suggesting that commotion means domestic violence or some other kind of disturbance. Holy cow, I don't know what commotion means. All I know is that's what's been said, is there was commotion. I haven't heard anything official, so I think we need to be a little bit cautious on this. Now, I've also heard through the grapevine that the county sheriff is going to hold a press conference, perhaps even tomorrow. Now, I hope he allows for questions from the press, and I think if he does, it's going to get really interesting in this case as these rumors start to be addressed. Personally, I think it's reckless that people are getting out there and suggesting domestic violence or some other kind of criminal event in the home on the 9th. Now, it might prove to be true, but frankly, right now, I'm just holding out, waiting for official statements to come out before I say one way or another what I believe is happening. I have my own opinions. You've got your own opinions, but I'm going to wait for that press conference and hope that they shed some light on this subject. Sorry, sorry about that, everybody. Let's take a pause now for just a second and tell me how you're feeling about this kind of approach with me. Yeah, prepared a video that I wanted to just post up, but I felt so bad when we had those problems today that I just wanted to jump on. And hopefully, you're all hearing me now when I figured out the mute button. So thanks for those of you jumping on. But yeah, this commotion word I thought was really kind of interesting. And you know what? Most of us think it's disruptive behavior of some kind, noise, or, uh, and our minds immediately look to things like arguing or other things. But a commotion could be dogs fighting or garbage cans getting kicked over, as far as I'm concerned. And I've seen a lot of emails and texts from folks today kind of weighing in that regard. But the thing I want to ask you about, and I'm going to look for some responses, is how you feel about the speculation. Because sometimes I think to myself, well, if I wanted to really grow this channel, what I need to do is get a little out on the edge and be a little speculative. But you know what? I keep drawing back, and I think you all are smart enough to create in your mind your own theories. You don't need me spinning things out of control or building them up. And anyway, so I'm going to look and see what you got to have to say here. Tank's wife says, commotion to me would be something as simple as someone dumping beer cans into the trash. Yeah, there. Well, there you go. Thanks, and here Momo Shark, yeah, some of this is way over the top. There are some, in my opinion, that take it over the top. Now, I really love how some of my colleagues in the true crime community, though, explore possibilities. And, I'm always the one that's kind of cautiously saying, of course, there's possibilities, but let's talk about probabilities. And sometimes that's not quite as exciting. I get it. And frankly, folks, thanks so much for supporting me. Someone wrote me a note the other day and said I was so boring that they fell asleep in the first 2 minutes of my discussion. So uh, I hope you stay awake. Yeah, Sharon McFall, could be an argument, yelling or throwing or anything like that. So yeah, this is interesting. Well, hey, let's jump back into the video. I'm going to leave you also to theorize what the word commotion means in regards to this case and the reports. You know what? Based on what we know so far, which isn't much, commotion is creating a whole lot of emotion. Now, Collier's husband reportedly told police that the last time he saw his wife was at 9 p.m. on that Friday night, September 9th, the same night as this commotion that went on. He said the two said their goodnights and they went to their individual room. And boy, oh boy, that has spun up a lot of speculation out there regarding the fact that this couple was sleeping in separate rooms. Now, the media is reporting that he said the reason they were sleeping in separate rooms is because he snores. I'll tell you what, if you've slept with a snorer, you can see why they might have chosen separate rooms. And frankly, it isn't that uncommon. It needs to be considered at its face value, folks. I don't believe it's an indication that there's discontent or violence in the marriage. Again, there may be. But to assume all of this without further information is really inappropriate, in my opinion. I believe that the information is going to come out, and it'll come out in due time. So let's just stop for a minute. How many of you were upset initially when you heard the husband sleeps in a different room? And then how many of you kind of changed your mind as more information became available? Even something simplistic like, well, maybe he does snore, or all of a sudden you started hearing or seeing others who are jumping on saying, yeah, my family sleeps in different bedrooms. Here's Lacey. One set of my grandparents slept in separate rooms and it wasn't weird at all. So yeah, that's interesting. Rochelle, my parents sleep in separate bedrooms due to my dad snoring. I don't think anything weird about that. My parents are not having affairs either. I am really glad about that, Rochelle. Thanks so much for weighing in. Uh, yeah, that's kind of an interesting one. And I really appreciate your comments. I think everybody's kind of coming in on the same thing. And yet, isn't it interesting how the emotion train gets us going when that first comes out and we hear they're sleeping in separate rooms? Because when we're young, sleeping in separate rooms might be because we're mad at each other. And anyway, here we go. Let's continue on. I've read the reports that suggest that the husband left for work early the next morning, September 10th. Now, that's a Saturday, and we don't know what his wife's activities were. We don't know what Debbie was doing that morning, but I think that they're going to be able to piece all of this together. But here's what we do know. Here are facts. At 2:55 p.m. that day, Debbie Collier was seen entering a Family Dollar store in Clayton, Georgia. Now, Clayton, Georgia is about 80 miles north of where they live. And this is really significant for a number of reasons, and we're going to be exploring those as we talk throughout the video. But first, I want to just pause long enough to watch that surveillance video of her shopping that day at Clayton's dollar store. Now, again, I think it's called Family Dollar, but here's the thing that's so important. I want you to look at this from a behavioral perspective. I want you to watch her actions and the way she's moving, whether she's looking over her shoulder. All of that's really important as we look at these criminal cases, because Most often, more is said by nonverbal behavior than by verbal behavior. So let's watch this. Man, I'm sorry that music got a little monotonous there, didn't it, folks? Well, I want to pause right here for a moment because we've got Sheila who just joined in. So I'm going to bring Sheila in here. Sheila, you look like you're at a nightclub. Now, don't wait till you got to turn the volume down on
My
your. Yeah, you got to turn the volume down on your set so that you're not listening to yourself. Just make sure you're listening to me, not through your monitor there. So, what's your question, Sheila?
well, I mean, I love your show. I
Oh,
watch
thank
you
you
all
so
the
much.
time with A&W or AWP, and
Yeah, I was going to say you should be watching it with a Diet Dr Pepper, not an A
right.
and W.
Well,
But
mine's regular Dr Pepper,
okay,
but this is a really sad story going on in Georgia here, where I live, and we have a lot of other ones. I had actually wanted to bring up another case, and I hated to interrupt this case, but
yeah, let's
uh,
stick right with this case if we
yeah,
can tonight.
yeah. So I really hadn't followed much on it, but I would like to touch base with you about another case later on if you would.
Well,
Um,
the way to do that, thanks for bringing that up, because folks, the way to get information to me is go to profilingevil.com and then go to the evidence room. And in the evidence room, you can put information in. The more information you put, the more links that you put in there, the better chance it has of me following up on it because there are just so many darn cases. Now, I got to ask you before we move on, Sheila, what's the deal with all the red lights? Are you being arrested, or is this what's the deal here?
so it's Halloween decorations that my daughter has put up.
That's good.
So
I
look on
hope
our security camera, it looks like our house is on fire.
that is awesome. What's your daughter going to dress up for as?
I have no idea.
All right. Well, we'll make sure that she has a great evening. And I just want to say thanks for supporting uh, me and Profiling Evil and being willing to
Absolutely.
call in.
You do great work. And I did submit one, but I will submit another one.
Okay. Thank you so much, Sheila. How close are you to Athens?
Not far. Not far at all.
Well, good luck. Let's get into this case and we'll talk about it a little more. Thank you so much, Sheila. Have
Thank
a
you.
great evening.
You too.
Goodbye. Hey, what a trendsetter. I hope that you're all noticing that that wasn't that dangerous for Sheila to do that. So jump on, let's chat a little bit. But now let's get back into this. We've just finished, and maybe let's look at some comments here. Number one, I've had people reach out and say I was troubled the way she walked into the store because the door kind of knocked her, and if she's got a bad back, how on earth did that happen? Others who are, and these are usually, I'm wondering if they just like to stir the pot a little bit, but they're saying it's not even Debbie Collier that's coming in. We know that it is, and but let me just see what comments you've got in here in regard to that. Here we got Crazy Mama who says, I didn't see her act like she was in any kind of trouble. Did you see anything strange? So that's kind of interesting. Let's get a couple more opinions first. Let's see. Debbie's checking her phone when she walks in the door. So yeah, I mean, we could come up with and spin all kinds of theories from that. She could be looking for text messages. I don't know about you. I go to Thanksgiving dinner and all I do is watch my grandchildren and my children texting each other across the table instead of we used to do this really cool thing where we would communicate with each other. And so yeah, it's hard to know because we don't know her personality. We don't know if she was a person who was glued to her mobile device all the time. uh, but I'll tell you what, you anywhere you go, that's all you see are people on their mobile devices anymore. Let's see. Well, here's an interesting one from Ruth Ann. I have a bad back and I run into doors and walls all the time. Thanks for that. Let's see. Here we got Crazy Mama. She did have a purse and the family stated no purse. Yeah. And I don't know, did that bother you? Because we've talked about this before, and I hope if you're not paying attention to the Profiling Evil Academy series, we go in and we talk about a lot of those things, like the challenges that you have with eyewitness accounts. Um, how do they know she didn't have her purse with her when she left? So it could have been communicated properly, poorly, and police didn't record it right. I mean, there's all kinds of reasons for some of these discrepancies. This is a kind of an interesting one from It's All Optics. I thought she probably was checking the list of items that she needed to pick up. And yeah, I mean, put a thumbs up if you are one who puts your shopping list on the phone so you don't make 3 trips to the grocery store. That was interesting. Here we go. Girl Friday. I didn't find it that odd. Alert from the phone or texting is not unusual. Yeah, I kind of agree with a lot of these. Maui Swift. Hey, so good to see you. I haven't chatted with you for a while. I think it's somebody that she knows as she appeared to be behaving normally, and the ominous text to her daughter was shortly after the dollar store visit. Yeah, that text is kind of interesting, isn't it? Well, let's look at this question real quickly. Tracy, did she possibly send the money via Venmo to the daughter as a sign to the hubby? They shared the Venmo and Facebook accounts. Man, this one is going to be tricky. And did she send that uh, Venmo, someone else orchestrate that? Did it happen from her phone or did it originate on a desktop computer or another phone? This one's going to be kind of interesting to see how it shakes out. And I'm really kind of intrigued by what is happening on this one. Well, let's jump in because I'm going to kind of move into one of the segments I did on Court TV. Well, what are your thoughts about Debbie's behavior, folks? I'd like you just to take a moment, pause, and enter your comments in that chat box down below.
And you don't have
Make
to
sure
pause.
that you're
This is for
looking for
everybody that's
comments from
recording and
other
watching
people
later.
also and respond to them. Talk with each other a little bit. Explore this case together and explore the behavior together. I think behavior is really important, and you've heard me talk about it over and over again. And if you didn't catch it, she purchased a poncho, a torch lighter, a tarp, and I'll tell you, I've purchased a lot of tarps in my lifetime. She didn't purchase a real big tarp, a tote bag, and paper towels. Now let's review a couple of facts that we know. We know that a neighbor reported that there was a commotion on the night of September 9th. Around 9 p.m., they go to bed. Those are facts. We know a fact that they sleep in different bedrooms, that the husband left the next day and doesn't know what his wife was doing during that time. And we know for a fact that at 2:55 p.m., she walked into that dollar store and made some purchases. 2:55. That means if travel time is accurate, that she would have had to have left home around 12:30 that day to get up there in time to go into that place. Here's something else that I think we can theorize. Based on the videos that we're watching, Debbie doesn't appear to be under any stress when she walks into that store. She's wearing those red bulldog colors, including a visor. Now, it's going to be really important in this investigation that we understand what kind of fan she is. Is she a real dedicated 100% bulldog fan? Or is it just fashionable to wear red on game day? This one's going to be kind of important because it's going to give us a little better sense. And I believe we're going to learn as this investigation continues whether she was meeting somebody up in that area and that's why she drove up there, or if she was under some kind of duress. This is why I'm so troubled. There is a significant amount of information that suggests she passed a whole lot of places she could have stopped to buy those items if that's all she was searching for. And there's a significant message that's left for her daughter shortly after she leaves that store at 3:09 p.m. That's only 14 minutes. Now, I don't know if you noticed, I didn't see any shaking of her hands or fumbling with her wallet, with her bags, or anything else. She looked pretty darn normal, like she was buying stuff like any other day. I would really like to see the exterior cameras on that building or the video cameras from across the street at other businesses just to see if there might be somebody that was following her or someone that appeared to be surveilling her. We may find out that those purchases are really pretty dang easily explained, like she was going to a tailgate party and she was just buying things to prepare for it. This is where interviews with her friends and associates is going to be so incredibly important. And of course, this is where the examination of all of her mobile devices and her vehicle and other information from a forensic standpoint is going to prove to be invaluable. But here's the deal. I can't figure out why she went so far north to go to a store unless she was driving up to meet somebody. Again, was she meeting a friend in the area and they were going to watch the game and party together? Or was there something more sinister happening? Now, here's why I'm stumped. I created this map and this drive time analysis of all the stores that are similar to the store that she went in within a 15-minute drive of Debbie Collier's home. You can see from this map that there are 3 stores that are really close to her home, less than 15 minutes away. In addition to that, there are 3 more stores that are about 16 minutes away from her home. Why on earth does she need to drive for an hour and a half to go to the same kind of store? Again, it causes me to theorize that she was either directed to go to that location, which could explain why she ends up 15 miles south of there, or that she was going up to meet a friend and happened to be a victim of opportunity. Regardless, 14 minutes after she left that store, 3:09 p.m., she sent a Venmo payment to her daughter, or at least someone sent a Venmo payment to her daughter. And I haven't even seen an official declaration of whether it came from her phone or some other device, but forensically, they're going to be able to show that. The money she sent was about $2,400. I think $2,385 or something, if I remember right. But here's what's really significant. She also attached a note to that Venmo payment that said, quote, "They are not going to let me go." Now, who's not going to let me go? Is it demons in her mind and she's making some declaration and trying to clear the slate and give her daughter some money? Or is it that she's being held for some kind of ransom? But remember, law enforcement said she wasn't kidnapped. That note also indicated that there was a key underneath a flower pot at the home. Now, again, that could have been information that was recovered during an abduction and being held and forced to write something. Or it could have been something where somebody had intimate knowledge that she kept a key under that pot and decided to write a note trying to stage this entire thing. So I want to stop there for a minute because there's a couple of important things that are coming out. Number one, again, we don't know that this is a homicide. Everyone wants to keep calling it a homicide. I thought law enforcement was a little premature to say, hey, it wasn't a suicide and it wasn't a kidnapping. So are they tipping their hand that there's more to the case and all they're doing is really getting all the busy work done and tying the loose ends together to bring this thing together? But it certainly is going to have something to do with the money, I believe, and that money is going to ring true in this investigation, unless it was just absolutely crazy luck. Now, I also thought it was interesting that the daughter was quick to say, my mother doesn't have mental health issues. And again, I don't know why somebody would say they're not going to let me go, but I've witnessed many cases over the course of my career where people suffering from some kind of a mental defect, whether it is a momentary mental defect, somebody mentioned earlier something about sleep deprivation, mental illness, or alcohol-induced mental illness, that there are examples that would support someone making a really bad decision like that. It's going to be interesting. I've tried to get a sense of the weather, and because of Ian rolling through, I mean, there's just a lot of bad weather the last couple of weeks, and it was clearly raining when they were recovering her body. It could explain why she needed a tarp. Having a torch, if you've ever gone out into the woods and tried to start wet wood, you can go through a batch of matches trying to make that work if you haven't put together a nice dry bed to start with. So could it be an accident? Absolutely could be an accident. Could it be homicide? It absolutely could be homicide. And I guess that's what makes these cases so stinking intriguing, is that we really can be quick to jump to a decision, but we don't know all the information. And perhaps the cops know a little more than we know. And I always like to kind of hope and think that they do. But let's jump back into this. This is another area that has just flat left me scratching my head. Now think about it. Collier's daughter said that it was incredibly stressful when she received that text message. And yet her daughter, and reportedly her husband, waited 3 hours to report her missing to police with this bizarre note happening. I'm really troubled by this. I mean, think about it. How long would you wait, folks, if your mother or your loved one sent you this message and disappeared off the map? Would you wait 3 hours? Listen to my exchange with Vinnie Politan on Court TV regarding this element of the case.
Mike King, I am so obsessed with this Venmo transaction because, again, 9 minutes afterwards, and Joe Scott Morgan did a great job of laying out the geography here. That dollar store is about 15, because Court TV producers were up there today, is about 15 minutes, 15 miles or so north of where her car is found. So if she went straight from the dollar store to where her car ended up, that Venmo would have to be sent while she's driving on that road. Otherwise, something else is happening. Something else is happening. What are your thoughts about the sending of this money and the timing of it all?
The money is a really big part of this thing, and we can't discount that. I'm so frustrated with this without having more information, because you're absolutely right. Why did she go so far north? She would have passed a lot of locations that she could have purchased those items. So was she compelled to go that direction is the first question. And it's going to be really interesting. I'm really glad Joe Scott's on, because I have so many questions in regard to the forensics of this. I want to see what the bottom of her feet look like. Did she trounce down through that countryside, or was she transported there and this was a staged scene? The fact that her hand's against the tree, is that a representation that somebody's made? That Venmo money is huge. And I think the thing that's bugging me the most about that, Vinny, is the transaction that apparently got everyone so spun up. That was 3 hours before she was reported missing. And holy cow, I'm thinking if somebody in my family said, hey, they're not going to let me go and here's some money, and find the key under the pot, I'd be making a call a whole lot quicker than 3 hours.
Yeah, because the daughter's making calls, and then I see Corey Pegues is nodding his head along with you. Because the daughter said she called and got no answer after getting that Venmo, Corey.
Yeah, but 3 hours, if my mom is missing after 3 hours and we know she's coming back, I can't answer her phone. She has a bad back. Like, it's all of these different factors. I'm calling for my mom immediately. I'm calling the police. You know, just like he said, I was perplexed when I found out they called 3 hours late. Not only did the daughter, but now we have to bring in the husband also because they called together. Why would it take them three? First, the husband didn't see her since the previous night. She left the location. You can't get in contact with her.
Well, it appears that local police began investigating this missing person case immediately once they heard the details. But it would take a day, 12:44 p.m. on the following day, September 11th, before Collier was discovered in that Georgia woods in that ravine, about 60 miles from her home. Now, investigators used location information from the onboard computer on her rental vehicle to discover where she was. Once they found her vehicle, then the canine handlers had to go into the woods and track her and eventually find her. I don't know whether they found one set of footprints or two sets of footprints. And if she was carried down into there rather than walking under her own control, because remember, she had a bad back, and who knows, she could have been dead at this point, then that set of footprints is going to be pretty darn heavy into the ground. And a half a mile away is a long way to carry somebody. So there's a lot of behavior here that needs to be dug out. Now, reports suggest that when they found her, she was partially nude. And some people have reported nude, but I think the more accurate reports are that she was partially nude. Probably the top missing, because there's some evidence to suggest or support that kind of theory. And she was hanging with one hand on a tree. Again, was that staged and her hand was placed there? Or was it an artifact of her crawling or trying to get up, or whatever the case may be? Now, one report I did hear that I'm comfortable reporting is that the reports suggest that she had charred marks on her skin, burn marks in the abdomen area. But again, defining that further or speculating further until an official report comes out is irresponsible, in my opinion. So I want to stop there for a moment, because this part of the investigation makes me wonder if this is an accident. And when we do death investigations, we have to consider whether it was suicide, accidental, natural causes, or homicide. And think about this as I kind of paint pictures in my mind of what the evidence is telling us. It causes me to think a little differently. Number one, what if it's a Saturday, her husband's at work, she wants to get away, she actually goes for a hike down in this area after running an errand that puts her at a dollar store to the north. It's really hard to explain that Venmo call, so I'm just spitballing here, folks. But now she says, I want to go and just listen to the ball game, and I'm going to get a tarp so that I don't get wet sitting on the ground, and I'm going to hike into this wooded area that I've hiked a dozen times before. And that's why victimology is so important in these cases, that we understand the kinds of things that this individual does normally. Does she go for hikes alone? Does she go out and have a nice little snack lunch by herself? But now she's got that torch, and she's trying to start a fire with wet wood. Again, think about this. Georgia, high humidity, a lot of rain, and we know it's raining on the day she's recovered. So she's using a torch to help her keep a hot flame to try to get a fire going. What if she used some type of accelerant to get that fire started? Now, when my kids, I raised them that a certain amount of Scout water was always appropriate for a fire when you were out in the woods and when the wood was a little wet. Scout water was a little bit of gasoline. and you had to stand back. And when you threw that match in there, boy, and you've seen it explodes and throws flames out. Now, what if the clothing she was wearing wasn't flame retardant, had nylon and other chemicals in it that would immediately go into flames when that hot flame hits? That would explain the burning and the charring, the clothes coming off, maybe even her ripping clothes off, and then being burned and overcome by the injury, dying there in the location that she's found. An accidental death. Now, how do you explain the Venmo amount? And was it even related to this case, or will it end up being the biggest red herring in the case? I'm going to just pause for a minute and see what you think about some of that wacky stuff I just threw out there. These are the kinds of things as an investigator that I think of when I go to a scene like this. I try to understand why. I could see an injured person crawling and grabbing a tree. In the same light, pre-rigor mortis, I could see someone staging a scene to look that way, including wrapping hands around something until the body stiffens up. So it's really kind of interesting. That's Mimi or Mel or Mimi. I'm so sorry. I think it's Mel. No, weird with a bad back to go on a long car ride and trip to a dollar store. Definitely not solo hike. Okay. Yeah. So I don't know. But I'll tell you what, the job of an investigator is to create as many questions and then either add credibility to the question or discount it as possible. And I guess that's why I try so hard to avoid coming up with a theory before I have all the facts. Let's jump back into this. Crime scene investigators responded to the site and they processed it. They recovered evidence and they recovered Collier's body. Hey everybody, it's Mike from Profiling Evil. I've been studying criminal behavior for more than 40 years, and one of my favorite research tools is Truth Finder. It's online and you're not going to believe the information stored there. So if you want to know more about that new neighbor, your babysitter, or your next online date, give Truth Finder a try. I'm including a link below with special discount pricing. You got to click the link to get it and then enter EVIL10 at checkout. We're an affiliate, which means we get a small commission, enough to buy a small Diet Dr. Pepper, but you can cancel at any time. Thanks for listening today. Hey, thanks for this super sticker, now, Maria. Since then, a number of people and some news stations have made their way into the area trying to get imagery for their stories. Today, Fox Digital News reported that they discovered an unfired bullet about 90 feet up the hill from the location where Collier's body was recovered. And holy cow, the speculation went wild. People across true crime channels and across the internet were saying, here's the proof. There was a gun involved and she was taken and forced down the scene, perhaps led by gunpoint. I hope we're not overstating and overspeaking before evidence comes out to show something otherwise. And here's why I'm saying that. Fox, when they found that bullet, immediately alerted law enforcement, who came to the scene and photographed and picked up the bullet, but not before Fox also photographed that bullet laying on the ground. Now, they shared the photograph, and I assume other information, with a retired investigator who's not associated with this case, just simply providing commentary, much like I'm doing. Now, the investigator, after looking at that bullet, suggested that the bullet could possibly be evidence dropped by the offender in this case, if it's a murder, and that offender would have been leading Collier down the hill at gunpoint. Again, he's suggesting that the bullet could be tied to this victim and this crime, if it is a crime. Now, I'm going to pause this for just a moment because I want you to study this bullet really closely. I immediately came up with some opinions that I'm going to share in just a moment in regard to this that are perhaps completely opposite of what Fox and the investigator were suggesting. And I'm saying this with absolute respect for the investigator who had 30 years of experience. It just some things that jumped out to me, and I'm going to be interested to get your opinion, and I'll be watching for those as we progress here. And to me, that seems like an awfully big stretch, and I want to share why I believe that. The report that I read, the newspaper account and the online report, states that the investigator thought the bullet was out of place because it's bow hunting season right now, not rifle season. And that would remove the possibility that it was simply dropped by a hunter walking through the area. Now that makes pretty good sense, and it's possible, but I don't think it's probable because the bullet had some really interesting characteristics that caused me to question this theory completely differently. For instance, if this bullet was tied to the case, there's only been 2.5 weeks since the time of Collier's death and discovery and the discovery of that bullet today. Now, again, I'm going to share this image taken by Fox Digital News today of the bullet at the scene and the condition that that bullet was in when it was discovered. It's pristine and it hasn't been touched. Now, again, I'm only going by my own experience, and I don't know that any of that really matters, but the behavior in this really does matter, along with some other physical characteristics and evidence that I observed. So imagine a suspect who's trying to force Collier to walk down that ravine for a half a mile, potentially, while not only directing and making sure that all of this evidence that's going to end up at the scene is carried, but also while carrying a rifle and working through the heavy brush. I don't know, it just doesn't seem likely to me that the offender, if they did have a weapon and if there was an offender, would be carrying a rifle. I suspect it might be more reasonable, at least in my mind, to think that they would be carrying a handgun, something that's easier to conceal and to move around with and move brush with. But again, this is all speculation on my part. But here's where I really have trouble with the theory that was pitched by that story. Look at this bullet laying on the ground where the news crew discovers it. Now I'm going to place next to that a .308 bullet fresh out of the box. I'm going to put it right here next to it, and I want to ask you, what do you see that's different here? Study this for a moment. Here's what caught my attention, folks. First, the bullet, the lead portion, now so you have the casing, and that's that stainless steel part of the bullet, and then the actual bullet is the lead projectile at the top. The bullet, that projectile, looks oxidized to me. And that oxidation makes me think that it's been sitting out in the elements a whole lot longer than 2 weeks or 2.5 weeks. Now, I want you to look at something else that to me is the smoking gun, so to speak, that argues against the possibility that this bullet was recently dropped on the ground. Look closely at the pine needles that are around and over the top of the bullet. Look how old and dried out they look. To me, they look like they've naturally fallen onto the bullet, and if that's truly the case, that would have had to have happened a long time ago for them to be dried out like that. I just don't think this bullet is tied to the case, but it's still a great find. Now, I want to stop there for a minute because I have heard so much discussion today about the bullet. And my buddy Ray Kelly just jumped on. 10 to Life. Annie was on with us earlier. If you didn't see, Annie's battery's running out on her phone. I said, call me up. Ray, give me a call if you got a minute. I put a link in here for people to jump on if they'd like to come on for a moment. But here's the investigator in me, folks. It's number one, when I looked at that bullet, that oxidation really troubled me. Now, This is where an expert comes in, not Mike King with some experience. And by the way, I've shot a lot of ammunition over my life. This is where an expert comes in to talk about what the process and the timeline is for oxidation to occur in that environment. Not just occur, but in that environment on that type of lead with that kind of a jacket around the lead. Because many bullets are different ways. They'll have brass around the lead. They'll have different kinds of noses on there. So all of that makes a difference. But this is where an expert is so darn important. And again, my job as an investigator is just to say, I got a question and I need to phone a friend. So that's the first thing. And then, well, what do you think about those pine needles? Now, what I don't have the advantage of is the ability to look around the area where that bullet casing was picked up. But every picture I've seen of that crime scene doesn't have dead trees in the area. It's a lush green area. And those pine needles remind me exactly of the pine needles at my cabin that are there after a winter. So that one troubles me. And it tells me that that bullet had nothing to do with this case. But let me read your thoughts here and let's see what you're thinking out there. So let's see. Ruth Chidley, I agree, Mike. Bullet has been there for at least a year. Yeah, interesting. Let's see. I thought the same thing about the old dry pine needles. I'm glad you picked that up, Linda. Let's see. Now, the investigator said that they believe it's a 223. It was a very narrow bullet and probably accurate. Again, a 223 is in a commercial weapon, something that's fired in like a Ruger Mini 14, a weapon that you can have a high capacity round in. It's used for sporting. It's used for hunting. I also spoke with some friends of mine at Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms today and showed them the photograph. And they kind of lean toward that it might be a 308 round. And that's why I used a 308 round in the image. But the 308 round looked a little bigger on the lead side. So we'll see how that all comes out. So let's see. I think there were a couple more. They just used the weapon to scare her to move off in a different way to get to her. Yeah, I don't know. But I guess what I'm trying to get across is that to me, that bullet and the story around it and any discussions that are going online based on my experience and just my gut feeling is that's just a huge red herring and it has nothing to do with the case. And again, I have a hard time believing that somebody's going to be trouncing through the woods with a rifle, trying to carry all that gear that's displaced in several different locations and force a person to go down there and maintain control. So while we're talking here, I'm going to bring in Josh, who has joined us, and we're gonna see what Josh has to say. Is it? Oh, Josie, I'm sorry. Hi, Josie.
My name is not Josie.
Well, let me see. What is it? Josh?
Joshua McMichael.
It's what?
My name is Joshua McMichael because I'm a really nice person.
Well, okay. So what's your question?
Do you know this woman? She goes in the shore, goes to the car station. When she says to this girl, I don't know what she's doing. She needs to stop doing that. She needs to go to prison and stay there.
Well, there you go. Thank you for calling in and sharing your thoughts on that. Where are you calling from?
I don't know. I'm just nervous.
You're just nervous? What country are you in?
Britain.
You're in Britain. Well, thank you so much for taking time. It is, holy cow, it's like 5 in the morning or something, isn't it?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, no wonder you're a little loopy. Well, thank you so much for
No
supporting
problem.
us here at Profiling Evil. And let's get back to this discussion, should we?
Yeah.
Thank you. Goodbye. Well, that was fun. Thank you so much for doing that. Okay, so somebody asked if I take phone calls. I really don't do the phone call thing, but I'll put the link in here again if you want to jump on. Here's the link in the chat box. Follow, and you can come in, and then you can use that like our last caller just did as a phone if you would like. So there you go. Well, let's see. Have I missed anything here? I know that there's just a batch of chats. And again, I'm going to ask you, hit the like and subscribe button on this thing, folks. And please give a thumbs up. But let me have a thumbs up if you like this format of just kind of exploring things as we go along. Again, I did this because this morning I tried to release this video at 7 this morning, frankly, because I thought that the sheriff might be putting out a press conference today. And I was in Saskatchewan, and the internet crashed, and we only got halfway through. So we got to right where we are now. So let's carry on. Now, the investigator who made these claims has certainly been given more information to look at than I have. And I don't want to be disrespectful in any way. I just frankly disagree with the analysis and the opinion based on what I'm seeing. But again, you be the judge. And I'd like to know what you think by putting your comments down below. Now, among the evidence that was recovered at the scene, there were also charred fragments of clothing, including some red cloth that seems to resemble what Collier was wearing back in that video. And remember, Collier was driving a rental car, and that too was taken into evidence. And I believe it's going to prove to be a treasure trove of forensic evidence. Now, I'm unaware if Collier's phone has actually been recovered, but forensic examination of all of her cellular data is absolutely being done at this point. They're getting subpoenas to get all that information, and they will understand that and the Venmo transactions and the information that's collected from other mobile devices from people connected to this case. All of that is going to give law enforcement a much clearer picture of what's going on here and where Collier may have been traveling, perhaps even what her plans were for the day. Yet all of this is going to leave us with questions about how this crime happened and why this crime happened. I spoke to this issue with Vinny on Court TV. Let's listen in.
King, does this strike you as any sort of ritual type killing, a serial killer, some evil mind that is going to torture this poor woman for whatever reason?
Not at all, Vinny. This one really, to me, goes back to the victimology. Who's this individual, Debbie? Is she a high-risk individual or is she low risk? And I think everything about her, there's no criminal history that I could see. She has a job. She's been doing the same thing day in and day out. She dresses modestly. This is what I would classify as a low-risk individual. And the only way low-risk victims, by statistics, become victims is that something happens in the circumstances they're in or the environment. So is it possible that she could have been victimized by an opportunistic killer out there that just happened to glump along at the same moment that she happens to be leaving? It's possible, but again, it doesn't make sense when she takes this drive so far, an hour-plus drive north, and then ends up back there. And this is where I think it's so important as we think about that victimology, that we then start thinking about the crime scenes. And is this really the crime scene where the death occurs, or is this a place that her body is disposed later and disposed of? We know her back is bad. She's not going to be hiking down there without a whole lot of trouble. And again, I go back and Joe Scott, I want to ask you that. I mean, how important are looking at the feet right now?
Yeah, her feet are very important. I'm glad you brought that up, because if she is not wearing shoes, there would obviously be trace evidence on the surface of those feet. And one other point I must make right here, that vehicle is an evidence-rich environment. I think, if something nefarious has happened to her, which, kind of all signs point that direction, goes without saying. Who occupied that same space with her, and how carefully did they utilize everything at their disposal to process that? one other thing, in a lot of the videography, our producers do a fantastic job, don't they, Vin? Just wonderful. These shots that they're showing of the rain falling out there. Rain's a bad thing from a forensic standpoint, but if the ground was wet out there and she has her own body weight, if somebody carried her out there, you could be looking at sets of footprints out there that would obviously be larger than hers probably, because she would have to be conveyed down there if this is a dump site. I hope that they took care out there to preserve anything relative to anything that might be left there that's going to be some essence of someone else that was in this environment.
Well, this kind of leaves us with the elephant in the room, doesn't it? I mean, who are the most probable suspects if this truly turns out to be a homicide? As we learn more about this case and about Debbie Collier and about family members, now we're going to undoubtedly learn more about this case as it unfolds, and we're going to undoubtedly hear rumors and speculation that could cause us to develop theories before we have all the facts. Let me remind you, something I say a lot on Profiling Evil, what Sir Arthur Conan Doyle said as he spoke for Sherlock Holmes. He said, "It is a capital mistake to theorize before one has facts, because insensibly we'll begin to twist the facts to meet our theories, rather than allow the theories to be developed as the facts unfold." Listen in as I address some of those issues with Vinnie Politan.
Mike King, I look at all these issues, and then I go back to the video from the dollar store, and I'm trying to understand why she's purchasing these things that end up at the crime scene. And again, going back to the beginning of my show, trying to make 2 + 2 = 4, I just can't do it here.
I think that's exactly right. It's really troubling. And when we get the answer, I think it's going to make perfect sense, Vinny. We don't know if this woman is preparing to go to a game, and all of that is part of tailgating, like you were suggesting, and that without her knowing, somebody was tracking her and following her. While I said this is a low-risk victim, there's no question that while she may not have known who the predator was going to be, the predator was completely aware, and this was a planned attack. It was a targeted attack. It had a reason behind it. There are some suspects in this case, haven't been named yet, that we're going to see the means and the motive, but this thing is going to come together and it's going to make perfect sense. And I think as it unfolds, it's going to be less likely that it was someone calling and telling her, pick up these items, because I think we would have seen a much more disheveled amount of behavior by her, handshaking and other kinds of things as she's at that cash register putting her card in. I think this is going to be opportunistic, but it was planned, not just happened to be two paths that crossed at the wrong spot.
Well, as we wait for more information to unfold, I'm going to leave this up to you to guess where I'm thinking the responsibility is starting to fall on this case. I believe that Debbie Collier was a low-risk individual. And if that's true, she would have known who her murderer was. She would have been a target of that aggression. You see, low-risk victims generally are perpetrated upon by people who are known to them, and frankly, they're targets. This causes law enforcement, as they look at this, to focus on her inner circle. And we're going to see a lot of pressure turning up there. It undoubtedly leads us to look at the dynamics in her daughter and her boyfriend's life and their interactions that they've had with each other, with Debbie and her husband, and frankly, with law enforcement. And we're hearing more and more come out about that. I believe that in the coming days, we're going to see a really clear connection between the discovery site, that place where Debbie's body is found, and Debbie's killer. I'm going to be watching that upcoming press conference, and hopefully the findings by the medical examiner are going to be what's really going to help bring this case together. I want to end with my buddy Joe Scott Morgan's comments from last night's show as he talked about the autopsy. Now, I'm going to hold off on Joe Scott for just a minute and bring in Louisiana Girl. How are you tonight?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Doing well, thank you. Thanks for your support over the year.
Oh, of course, always. You're an amazing platform. I love the way that you treat these cases with dignity and respect.
Well, thank you.
I just have to say this. There's a lot of speculation about the tailgating and the game and all of the things, right? In the South, college game day is a huge deal. It's a big deal. We don't play. I'm obviously an LSU fan, but the speculation about the husband, like he's parking cars at 9 a.m. for kickoff at 4. That's not unusual. We'll take tailgate all day. The speculation about her wearing the jersey and all of the things, I'll do that even if I'm not tailgating or going to the game. If that were the case, in my opinion, with Debbie, she wouldn't have been an hour and a half away from Athens an hour before kickoff. It makes zero sense to me.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Louisiana girl. So let me play devil's advocate for a moment. What if she had some business north and that took her to that dollar store? What
Sure.
if she wasn't planning on going to that game because of how hard it is for her to walk? Now, that doesn't explain a half-hour trance through the woods, but what if she's not able to go somewhere to watch that game? Is someone like you going to find a park to sit down in and listen to the game?
Only if I have Wi-Fi or her cell service. I mean, I'm watching it and that's happening. That would be the only way that would happen. I mean, we've gone to tailgate and not gone to the actual games
Yeah.
and sat out in the parking lot with other friends that weren't going to the actual games. Because personally, and I'm a weirdo, I love feeling the energy from the stadium, but I want to watch it on a screen because you're not going to see it any closer or better, right?
But either way, you're not going to miss that game, right?
No, sir, I am not.
And would a rabid fan, in effect, Debbie Collier wearing her red and not able to go to the stadium, try to find a place to either watch that or...
Possibly, but the woods, I don't know. Can I ask you this? Because I don't know this. Do we know if she has any ties to that area up there?
Yeah, so actually, there's some really interesting things that extended family and friends that come up on reports that I've looked at with her, but that's why I kind of intimate that I think we're going to see that there's a tie from that area to perhaps whoever is maybe more intimately involved. But the question always becomes, again, we think about all these possibilities and then we start to drive down to the probabilities. And is it probable that she would trounce off with a bad back half a mile into the woods, down a hill on a rainy day where there's lots of mud, and all those things start to take you a little bit further toward what your argument is, but I can't discount how wacky you all are in watching college football too.
Come down to Baton Rouge on a Saturday night. I'll show you how it's done. It's awesome. We have a lot of fun.
Now, this is interesting, and I don't know the answer to this. Kara M says it wasn't a rainy day. It was absolutely a downpour when they recover her body. And do we know if there were pockets of rain and if that area was rainy or not rainy? Again, you have to think about why on earth was that tarp being purchased. Could have been to collect debris, could have been to put across a dirty park table. There are a lot of reasons why people buy tarps, and that's why I thought it was very important that tarp wasn't a big painter's tarp, but more of a small covering tarp. But Louisiana girl, thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
I appreciate you jumping on.
I do have a random thought though, in relation to that. She bought a poncho. If I'm not insane.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And do you buy a poncho? I guess if you're fixing to get into some messy stuff, or you're expecting rain. So I don't know. It's an interesting question, isn't it? And that's why I always say, let's go back and see what the evidence is teaching us, not what the emotion is teaching us. And that's part of that whole investigative process. But thanks so much for jumping on. I really appreciate it. Appreciate all your support.
No worries. Love you always and support you always.
Oh, thank
Good
you
night.
so much. Have a good
Good
evening.
night. Mwah.
That's awesome.
The
Let's finish this
autopsy. That's what I'm waiting on. I want to see what this woman endured, Vinny, because, you know, I don't know that I have had more anticipation over a cause of death in a case in my recent memory, and I cover cases every day, than this case. I'm waiting to hear what the Habersham County Coroner's Office says, and I suspect, you know, maybe I'm wrong, but I suspect we'll be waiting a few more days because I think they're trying to cover all of their bases and they're waiting on talks. But I'm going to be very curious to see what level of violence was involved in these circumstances that brought about Debbie's death.
Well, folks, go back and watch my videos on crime scenes. See if you can begin to determine where the initial contact site was in this case, where the actual crime occurred, and if relevant, where the disposal site is. And then you tell me, do you think that Debbie was found at the crime scene or a disposal site? And what do you think happened to Debbie Collier? Was it an accident? And if you believe it's a homicide, why do you believe it's a homicide? Don't forget to follow the money, folks. I believe the money is going to play out big in this investigation. And I think it's going to help clarify the means, motive, and opportunity that led to Debbie Collier's death. Why was that money transferred? Who made the transfer? Who had access to the money once it was digitally delivered? I'm going to be watching for your comments down below, so please take time and put them in there. And I hope you'll take time to respond to each other. Spend some time talking to each other. And please make sure you're pounding that like and subscribe button, ring the bell, all that stuff. I'm going to stop there for a minute, and I'm going to bring in Mel. How you doing, Mel?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing very well. Thanks so much for jumping on. I hope people are kind of liking this. It's kind of a stretch for me, and the back office always tells me I have to mature and learn how to do some of this stuff on my own. So thanks for jumping on with me. What's your question?
Well, I don't have a question. I just I just wanted to say that I appreciate you in this true crime YouTube community. Just your responsibility and the way that you like make people think about different scenarios and just your whole theory on it is great. And I love how you profile victims so that we can kind of better understand how to protect ourselves and how to keep each other safe as well. And I just wanted to say, because we were talking about college football and you're in my alma mater, I'm a U of S grad. I graduated from there. I lived there for just over 10 years. And then I went and got an advanced degree from the University of Florida. So I'm also a Gator. And I just wanted to say, go Huskies, go Gators. And yeah, I just appreciate you. So thank you.
Well, thank you. I've got a question for you. So when we've talked about risk reduction, what has been the most meaningful aha moment for you as you've watched Profiling Evil for the last couple years?
I don't don't really know. I had one, but I forget them so quickly. So my aha moments are more emotional than they are like words. So I feel them and then they become part of me. But I think you were talking about just recently. Um, oh my goodness, I always forget names, but um, just that we don't really have the capability to understand what kind of people are out there because we don't think the same way that these evildoers do. And so we would all love to believe the best in each other and that we're safe inherently and that people are inherently good. But it only takes one bad person. It only takes one stalker who's on the edge of their narcissistic injury spiral to cause really severe harm. And so we, not that we need to be hyper vigilant or hyper alert, but we need to just understand that like not everybody is like us. And so just,
I really appreciate that, because that concept that you're talking about, I think we sometimes fail to really make a point about the idea that we project our own value
yes,
system on the predators out
yeah,
there, and we think to ourselves, "Holy cow, I would never
yeah,
sneak up and violently assault someone," and so we allow our guard to drop, and then in some cases we become victimized. I need you to
yeah,
know
absolutely.
you still have just a little bit of Saskatoon in you, and when you say about or however,
About, I know.
yeah. So you may have gone and picked up a little Florida Gator language, but you didn't lose. You didn't lose. And what do they call that middle point of Canada? The
The prairies.
yeah, well, they call it the prairies, but there's like a kind of a slang term for, you're not on the east and you're not on the south. You're just somewhere stuck in the middle when you're. But I love Saskatoon.
Landlocked.
No. For those, I'm going to just so the Delta Hotel along the river.
Yep.
I was
Yeah,
staying
beautiful.
at the Delta, and it's got a big metal fence around it, and there's a little park bench out on there. And I was actually helping Adventures with Purpose on a case that they were working on, and we were doing a little live interaction. And so I had my laptop set up on the park bench, and I was facing the Delta with the river behind me. And this guy stopped and he said, "Dude, is this your house?" And folks, if you haven't seen the Delta, it's like this, looks like a big, huge, like rich person's castle. But
That's where
anyway.
Queen Elizabeth stayed when she came to Saskatoon.
Well, then they were still very emotional about the Queen, so it was actually fitting then that I was there. But thank you so much for supporting Profiling Evil and jumping on with me tonight.
Yeah. Well, thanks for being the voice of reason in all of this.
Oh, that is a compliment, and thank you. I appreciate that. Have a great evening.
Take care, Mike. You too.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Goodbye. Well, folks, I'll tell you what. I hope you've had a informative night. It's been kind of fun for me, kind of a different way of doing things, and I just really appreciate all your support. We'll end up with what I had here to say as we wrap up the night, and then I'm going to be watching for a couple of comments to pop up as we go through this. So you get all of our notifications here at Profiling Evil. I hope you'll share our channel with your friends. And please share us contacts out there. And if you're interested in helping us out financially, consider joining one of our channel memberships. And if you'd like to make a donation that's just one time, go over to our PayPal account. The links are down below. Make sure you're looking for us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter. And if you're into podcasts, folks, check out Profiling Evil on your favorite podcast platform. And by the way, if you're in Southeast Asia, check out Mapping Evil with Mike King. We just released season 2, where we think we solved a 70-year-old murder in Queensland. Catch the international podcast winner, Mapping Evil with Mike King. Well, hey, folks, thank you so much. Let's just see if there are any last points here. But to all of you, I really appreciate all that you do to support us, and I hope you had fun tonight. I had a lot of fun. It's good to be back home, and I'm sorry we had problems today on the premiere this morning. As I said then, I don't control the internet. But thanks so much for supporting Profiling Evil, and we'll see you all soon at the next crime scene.